Have you ever been so excited to drive a car that you have literally peed yourself? No, neither have I. But that behind me is a Toyota 86, and it's a car I've been super excited to get behind the wheel of. And let me tell you what, guys, it is a super great, it's a pretty good car. And today on this episode of the Fast Lane Car, we're gonna go over all the really good stuff, the really bad stuff. So come with me, let's take a little ride. And at the end of this video, we'll decide whether or not the Toyota is a keeper. Okay, first things first is the full Fast and Furious send. So, got to get into my Dominic Toretto position, lean back a little. There we go. And in 3, 2, 1. Oh yes, here we go. Stare out the window. In a second, if I had triceps, they'd be bulging. Stare at the camera. In a third, that's 54 miles an hour. Yeah. So, not that quick. But you gotta understand the thing about the 86, and it's a little bit like Zooey Deschanel, but Zooey Deschanel an elf, because it's extremely good looking, but it's also an elf. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a great car to look at, but it's also a little bit slow. But at the same time, it's Zooey Deschanel. And you know you definitely go to town, because around town, this thing is pretty great actually. It doesn't have a lot of go, but the handling is tight, the visibility is pretty good, and it even has a decent amount of ground clearance, which means bumps like this, I don't have to worry about bottoming out the front end. However, it does have the single most annoying feature I think I've seen in, well, just about any new car. I mean, it's, well, just come with me, take a look. So you just got your brand new Toyota 86. You start the engine and you're excited. So the first thing you do, of course, plug in your phone. What song do you choose? Well, you need a banger, it's a brand new car. So naturally it's gotta be the Mariah Carey Christmas album. Take your phone, start blasting Carey, and off you go. Throw your phone on the seat next to you. And immediately you notice a beep. And you probably think, well, that's kind of weird. Why is it beeping at me when I'm driving along? And then you notice this flashing light. A seatbelt warning light. Now, everyone in the car has their seatbelt on right now, me and the videographer, so why is it telling me there's a seatbelt warning light? Anyway, you crank up Carey, singing along, everything's fine, but then there's immediately another issue, because how can I enjoy All I Want for Christmas Is You when it's beeping at me? And then, wait for it, it gets worse. It starts fast beeping. Well, what's going on is the car thinks that there's a person in the seat next to me just because my phone is there. The phone is triggering the seatbelt warning, and if I pull the phone off, it goes away. So it thinks that there's someone unbuckled in the passenger seat just with my phone here. Now, I'd understand that if, you know, there was a heavy backpack or maybe groceries, but a phone? It's sensitive enough to pick up a phone? How is this a person? Like, on what planet is there even a baby that's light enough to be that? I don't know, that's really annoying. If you're watching this video, you're probably a car gal or a car guy. Also, thank you for watching my little video. It's very nice of you. But anyways, let's talk about the engine, because, where's the latch? Oh, there it is. You probably know this car pretty well by now, because it's been out about as long as I have. It's 7 years old now, and it's got a Boxer 4-cylinder under the hood, 2 liters. Oh yes, and it's red. It develops 200 horsepower and some torque, but not really enough torque, if I'm being honest, because up here at a mile above sea level, well, I know for sure it's slower than an Expedition, because I raced one. Well, let me clarify. She wasn't racing, but I was. So it's slower than a Ford Expedition, but it certainly is faster than walking up to the back of the car. See what I did there? I thought that's pretty clever. You'll find that it actually has a trunk, because it's a coupe, and probably my favorite part of the Toyota 86 over the competition, because unlike something like a Type R, which is a great looking car, or a Golf GTI, you've got the classic coupe profile. It also means you have the classic coupe trunk, which is pretty small compared to those cars, but actually, I mean, it's pretty big for the size of the vehicle. So one of the cool things you'll notice in the trunk is there's actually a little button, and you'd never know it unless you watch this video. So congratulations. But you push a little button, and it's actually a trunk lockout, because how it works is, if I engage it, then all of a sudden, the trunk release button here does nothing. So it's like a valet mode. If you give your car to someone and you want to lock your watermelons or something precious in the trunk, you can't actually get to the trunk using the button. You have to use the key. Clever engineering. So this wasn't actually supposed to happen, but it appears that I have locked myself out of the trunk completely because nothing's working. I know this because I read the manual, but there's a little key in the key, and if I put the little key in the little hole, please work, please work. I'm gonna have to explain to Toyota why I can't get into their trunk. Ah! Oh boy, now the key doesn't actually fit in the hole. What is going on? Ah! Okay, check this out. Please work, please work, please work, please. Ah ha ha! So, really, if you use that little button, your watermelons are gonna be super safe because there's no way you're getting into the trunk unless you know the key in the key and the hole in the trunk secret. So if you haven't noticed, the Toyota 86 is covered in these little TRD logos. There's only about 5 of them, so I shouldn't necessarily say covered. But TRD in the 86 means that this is kind of the special edition. They're only building 1,400 of these. They're all raven black, and they all have these super rad stripes down the side. Yellow, orange, and red, which are 3 colors that I really don't like together. But nonetheless, it's a pretty interesting look. Now, the TRD version gives you some fancy shock absorbers, or Sachs shock absorbers, Brembo brakes. It gives you this unique raven black paint and some really interesting interior bits. Luckily, Toyota knows what a fast color is. And this is actually my favorite part of the interior. And it's kind of because I'm 9 years old, but it's also because it's really cool. You've got red stitching down the side. You've got red stitching on the door panels. You have red panels on the panels. You've got, of course, the red inserts on the seat. And then you've got my favorite feature. Oh yes, look at that. Red seat belts. Now there's slow colors like beige or green. And then there's fast colors like red. And Toyota knew this, and they put just the perfect amount of red on the interior. Not so much where you're like, oh wow, this is an AutoZone dumpster dive of cheap plastic parts, but enough where you're like, yeah, that's pretty rad, especially on the steering wheel. Probably my favorite part about the inside of this car, and maybe yours too, is when you sit in it, the whole car just kind of hugs you like a warm blankie. That's a lame thing I've just said, but it's true because you get in it and the seats are nice and tight and everything is just close and intimate and it's easy to drive and it's fun to drive. It's just a nice place to be. And yes, it's small. If you're over my height, like 6'2", 6'3", you're probably not going to be that comfortable. But if you're about 6'1" like I am, it's actually not bad at all. And the visibility is pretty good. A lot of these sports cars are kind of like sitting in a pit. Now, some of the thoughtful bits that I've talked about earlier, well, they're suede on the parts that I like the most. Check this out. Close the door, window all the way down. This is how we cruise in America. And yeah, look at that. You got a suede part right where you put your arm. I love that. You also have an entirely suede dashboard, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's just a really premium touch in a fairly affordable car. Part of the Toyota TRD package are the tires, the wheels, and the brakes. Huge wheels for the size of the car, 18-inch wheels. You've got super aggressive Michelin tires and Brembo brakes. Now the Brembo brakes look really cool, and you can see that they barely fit behind these wheels. You know, what's that? Maybe an 1/8 of an inch gap there. I will say, you don't really get to use them all that often because you're never really going fast enough to need them. However, if you're just out and you really want to put the braking performance to the test and you slam on the anchors, I can tell you these Brembos, they stop this car incredibly quickly. There's also a really rad line of switches across the dashboard. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a big sucker for toggle switches, and the more toggly the better. And these are pretty toggly switches. They're awesome. So they control the climate control, and you know, they're not metal, but I love how they have these little grates that separate them. And once again, it just feels really pretty premium. You also have these nice knobs that control the climate temperature as well as the direction and where the fan's going. I mean, I know it's not, you know, the Lexus LC that I just reviewed, but it actually is a really nice interior, and it's covered in red. I keep messing up the name of this car in video, and I'm sorry, Toyota, it's because I'm dumb, but the reason I'm doing it is because it's had a few names in the last few years. You know, it started out as a Scion, as in the FRS, also the Subaru BRZ, and then in Europe it was known as the Toyota GT86, and then when Scion died, it became the Toyota 86 here in the US, but in Nicaragua it's actually known as the Toyota FT86. So, fun fact actually, shout out to all my viewers in Nicaragua. Thanks for watching. The standard Toyota FR86Z has a pretty subdued exhaust. The TRD, however, has got the TRD exhaust, and it sounds like a pissed off Subaru, because largely underneath it's a pissed off Subaru. There are two exceptionally great parts about the 86. What am I going to tell you that you don't know? Well, the steering is great, and you know that. But I didn't know that, and it's not just great. It's probably the best steering I've ever felt. It's so direct and it's so precise. And actually, maybe something you didn't know, but this TRD exhaust. Oh yeah. I mean, it's just a little itty bitty 4-cylinder. But being a boxer, it's got kind of this unique Subaru-esque growl. And the TRD exhaust is nice because A, it's warranted by Toyota, and B, it's not over the top. I mean, a lot of the exhaust you hear on the Toyota ZBR 87s are a little too loud, but not on this one. Oh yeah, love it. Okay, so it's time for me to do the gas cap test, and if you're unfamiliar with this test, I can't not lose gas caps. I lose them a lot. So let's see if the Toyota has a solution. So first of all, I got a string, which I'm not a big fan of because it dangles and can scratch the paint, but actually, yeah, it's a pass. I got a little holder here. One thing I did notice that I'm not a big fan of here, premium unleaded fuel only. That means this car is going to be a little bit more expensive to run than like your standard Toyota, but it's a small price to pay for a performance-oriented vehicle. It's also on the right side, which is good because here in the US, when you break down, it won't break down, but if you do or run out of gas, you'll pull over to the right, which means that I don't have to stand in the traffic to fill it up. Good stuff. Another pretty crazy interior feature is the speaker cover here, and it's pretty bizarre because you can actually see the speaker hiding underneath. There's two of them actually underneath the cover, but there's not two separate speaker covers. It looks like someone took a pancake and just draped them over a couple hockey pucks. It's a really unique design. I actually think it's kind of cool, and it's something that no other car I've ever seen has. So there is some kind of weird stuff on the interior that's probably not my favorite. For example, you've got this little cover here on the column, which is clearly meant for a key. And if you get a base model 86, you do get a key. However, because this is the top of the line TRD one, if I can find it here. Oh, there it is. Push button start, which means I got a button down here next to the shifter. Unfortunately, you still can see the key plug, so that's not so great. The other thing that's not so great is, well, being honest, this little cubby here. And I don't really know what it's for because it'll only fit maybe $1.25, maybe $1.75 in quarters if you really push it, but it's got no other apparent use. And certainly if you drive this car like an 86 is meant to be driven, that $1.25 to $1.75 is going to go flying out the side. So that's a little weird. Other stuff that's not so good, well, I don't have a center armrest, which is an issue because I live in America and we only drive to McDonald's and you have to have places to rest our fat arms. Then of course you've got the head unit. And if you notice, I did say the word head unit, which is a weird word to use in factory-made vehicles, but it really is a head unit. It certainly looks like it was made by Car Toys, and it's just not that good. The buttons are way too small, they're too easy to push accidentally, but the gauge cluster is brilliant. sorry, not Jeremy Clarkson. The gauge cluster is, what's a good, I'm not very good with the adjective thing. It's really good because you've got big center tachometer in white, easy to read. You've got this really pretty cool speedometer that hinges far. 160 miles an hour is very optimistic in this car, by the way. And then the right one is actually digital, and it actually shows you a lot of really helpful information. So you've got water temperature, oil temperature, voltage, but you can also go ahead and see, you know, like a lap timer. Pretty neat. And a power graph that shows you your peak power curve and your torque and kilowatts and Newton meters, and it's all very cool. Not that it's all that useful, but I do like having the power meter. And then of course you've got the G meter. And if you're going to have a Fast and Furious like sports car, you got to have the G meter. Per requirements mandated by the law, the 87 has to have a backup camera. And it does, but it's not in your usual place. It's actually up here in the mirror. And it's actually pretty cool. So the way it works is when I put this car into reverse, this little screen shows up in the mirror, and then when I take it out of reverse, it goes away. It like disappears completely. So the Toyota 86. Do I like the 86? I really like the 86. I think it's super fun to drive. I think it looks great. But it's a little bit too expensive. The TRD model you see behind me is over 33 grand, and for just a couple grand more you could get a Civic Type R, which is faster and also looks cool but can hold more people. And it's also just a little bit too firm. I mean, I know that it's a sports car, but when you're going down the highway, it's a little too droney and the dampers are just this much too hard. So because of that, I don't think it's a keeper in the long run. Would it be fun to drive around on a nice twisty road? Of course, and it is. But for 33 grand, a couple grand more, you're looking at something like a Mustang GT, which is going to be quicker and more comfortable. It's just a hard sell, and it really, really needs to be a little bit quicker. As always, I'm Tommy with the Fastlane Car. Let me know in the comments below how annoying you think I am and how much you hated this video. I'm sorry I'm trying something new. Or if you liked it, then give it a like. As always, I'll see you next time.